Okay, now I'd like to welcome to the podcast from ProSportsAction.com, host of Oh You Didn't Know Wrestling Show, which is a lovely Patreon must-have. The great Brad Shepard. Brad, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Really frustrated. I started watching Orange is the New Black, and
Oh, yeah.
I don't like it, but I'm so far into it now I have to keep going.
What season are you into?
I just finished season 6, and it's just that the whole thing. Everybody just looks like they need a severe wash.
The first season wasn't as bad. I haven't seen anything beyond that, though.
And I've got to use a wrestling term, hate, with the opening credits, because if I wanted to see a bunch of women with facial hair, I'd go out binge drinking in Brooklyn.
Yeah, but isn't there like nude women in the shower? Isn't there lesbian angles?
See, I've really gone off the idea of sex on TV because, like, if I can watch Hulk Hogan get his dick sucked on my phone on the bus to work, then I don't need to see saggy tits on fucking Friends.
Hey, but Hughezy, the big thing about that is, okay, so Hulk Hogan has a 10-inch penis. I don't know if you know that, but that's testimony. But Terry Bollea does not. Yeah, he doesn't.
He's got a working penis, brother. But that's like, do you ever get when you're in the house alone and you get a giant boner? Then when your partner turns up and it's just about reaching 2 inches and you think, are you ready for sex with me?
Are you sure?
Yeah.
You really want to do this?
It's like, I've got it. But let's talk a little bit of wrestling here because, of course, last night was Clash of Champions, which I didn't watch and I'm never going to watch. But I did read the spoilers on how it ended, which was Shock Horror, Seth Rollins won again, Bray Wyatt did a run-in or whatever and attacked him. Now, this is the question I've got for you. I think that the Bray Wyatt character is brilliant. And I love the way that's presented and the whole representation, I was going to say, presentation. But for me, the problem is Bray Wyatt is a fucking terrible wrestler. So the long-winded question is, do you think that this Bray Wyatt push is all going to come to nothing?
I think that's to be determined. I mean, ultimately, I really love the character, and so far, for the most part, how they've executed it. But my concern is always like the in-ring part. They've done the build-up of Bray Wyatt. It's been, for the most part, as I said, really good. But how do you transition the vignettes to the ring and still make it interesting without it being just another match amongst a gazillion other matches, and protect that character and keep him special when you have so much content to produce every week?
Yeah, and because that was my whole thing. Everyone spoke about how great the entrance was at SummerSlam, and it was like amazing. But people forget how bad the match was.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, I don't think it was. You're not going to get a 5-star match, so to speak, to use the Uncle Dave terminology, out of Bray Wyatt. I mean, that's the character. I mean, you look at Hulk Hogan in the 80s, for example, and you look at Hulk Hogan versus Hulk Hogan in Japan, where he could actually wrestle a little bit, but the character kind of restricts that. So when you talk about, the Fiend and that type of character, it automatically restricts what you can do already anyway. So you're not going to see the flips and the tumbles and a really exciting style out of the Fiend. You're going to see something that's more calculated and tactical and kind of, boring compared to a lot of what people would see today.
yeah, and the thing that I always get in arguments with, because I do a lot of work for Keeping It 100, and when I see for their YouTube channel, and when I see the comments that they get from fans, it's really worrying how stupid they are. And a lot of them have forgotten that WWE have tried to push Bray Wyatt twice before. They even literally had him as champion going into Mania, and it stank worse than me after a mild workout.
Yeah, by the way, I just want to say, I know you do a lot of work with Keep It 100, and Conan is great, et cetera, et cetera. Disco Inferno, I just want to say, The guy is a mark. I mean, I just want to say it. Disco Inferno is a mark, and he talks about the marks, quote unquote, but there's nobody who's maybe a bigger mark than Disco Inferno. I know that's going to be hard for him to hear, but yeah, the guy loves to put himself over, and he associates with a lot of wrestling journalists. So at the end of the day, what is he really critiquing when he does these things?
You know what the crazy thing is, and this is going to sound very insincere, but even before I get linked up with Disco, so to speak, and for the record, I'm taller, more jacked than Disco Inferno. He couldn't beat me in a fight. But I always thought that he was a widely underrated performer.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Like, I watched Disco Inferno in WCW and thought the same thing. You know, it's unfortunate he's a gonzo-nosed motherfucker who has to be right about everything and who just doesn't know what he's talking about and has to shoot off at the mouth. I mean, besides that, he's like 50 years old and working at a strip club, but I mean, outside of that, he's totally fine.
Yeah, never said a thing wrong to anyone. But of course, when we mentioned Disco, his big criticism that generally comes from the towards like AEW and stuff, and even WWE, is the fact that they tend to pander to certain groups of fans and like the social justice warrior crowd. So, what's your take on the fact that in wrestling they seem to have a bad habit recently of pandering towards getting a pat on the back instead of maybe putting on the best show?
I actually agree. And, you know, interestingly enough, I agree with that doofus quite a bit when it comes to, you know, taste in professional wrestling. Like, I think he's right. I think they're catering to a niche fan base, and I get that. But at the same time, you have to expand your audience on national TV, and that means doing things that is going to attract a dormant or casual audience, whatever term you would like to use. And, you know, I think in AEW's case, they're not doing that. They're sticking to their strict fan base, again, which is fine when you're not on TV. But at the end of the day, when you're on TNT and you're competing with WWE on Wednesday nights, you're going to have to bring it, and you're going to have to do something that's going to draw those fans in or draw new fans in. And, you know, I think that's a big concern with their product when you look at what they've done so far.
Yeah, because that was one of the things. I don't know if you're aware of Kenny McIntosh has been inside the ropes. Well, I did an interview with him, and Kenny is he's an openly very proud gay man, and we spoke about the fact that if AEW thinks pushing Sonny Kiss and the fact that he's so openly gay is going to draw in the LGBTQ community to watch, then they're out of their mind, because like if anything, that'll turn them off. Because the thing about Sonny Kiss is, and this is going to sound silly, we all know he's gay. Nobody gives a shit that he's gay. But right. The fact that his character is all based on the fact that he's gay, does that mean we have to like him? Or if we think he's a bad wrestler, does that mean we hate gay people?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, to me, it's really odd because when you talk about those type of characters, WWE has a history of basing the characters around those type of stereotypes. Like, the entire character is based around, is he gay? Or AEW, they could fall in the same trap as well. So you can have a gay, lesbian, bisexual, LGBT, whatever character, but the character is based on something completely different. They just happen to be LGBTQ+, right? And so I think that's where sometimes they miss it. They go for those cheap stereotypes. We've seen this with African-American wrestlers or, you know, other type of wrestlers in WWE, and it's like, they can be one thing and still be another. There can be layers to a character. That's totally okay. And I think a lot of times they miss out on that.
Yeah, because I always bring it back to the Freddie Mercury analogy. It's like, he wasn't great because he was gay. He was great because he's great.
Yeah.
Just so happened that with men like me walk into the room, he goes, oh my.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you. But I got, of course, we're talking about like social justice warrior shit in AEW, and they just fairly recently hired Tony Schiavone to do commentary work, which is great because I fucking loved Tony Schiavone when I was a kid. But if you happen to check out his podcast, What Happened When, he's not afraid to make like racial jokes. Like I'm not saying he's racist because I don't think he is, but like he's no problem doing like pardon like jokes about Asians and stuff. So do you think that sort of shit is going to be what do you call it unearthed or brought to attention now that he's about to go on national TV?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely possible. I mean, there is a cancel culture in society. It really does reflect society. We see it in wrestling, it reflects society. And so it's very possible that we'll see that. I'll give you a story here. So I posted a video of Tony Schiavone, and he was singing, "Lick that pussy, lick that pussy, lick that pussy good, motherfucker." I can't sing like Tony Schiavone can, but the point is that I got a direct message from What Happened When, the official Twitter account, and they said, "Hey, would you mind deleting that because we don't want to impact anything that Tony does in AEW?" Yeah. So I said, look, I'll delete it because at the end of the day, I'm a Tony fan. I thought it was funny. Like, I'm not offended by this. Nobody should be. I thought it was funny. So I said, but look, if it's going to offend or potentially cause an issue for Tony, I'll be glad to delete it. But I think people just have to lighten up. Like, Twitter is Twitter. It's not real life. And I think there's this culture of just being outraged about anything. And I don't think that's healthy for society. I mean, being outraged doesn't mean that you're actually in favor of stopping those type of things like racism and sexism, etc. It just means you're going for attention on social media. And you can say things like Tony said and feel perfectly fine with not liking those type of bad things.
Yeah, like that was the thing. There was a while back I was at my mum's and I found this box of my old stuff, and in it was a DMX, whatever his debut album was, and I thought, fuck, I haven't played this in decades, so I'm sticking it on, and the song, where
X gonna give it to you.
Oh,
that was classic. A good one. That's a classic.
But the song, "Where the Hood At"?
Yeah, where the hood at? Where the hood at? Yeah.
So I've got it up playing loud, and I'm thinking this is fucking amazing, and but then you start listening, and he's going after gay people, and he's saying the N-word every seventh word, and you're like, oh shit, get the fucking windows down, turn that volume down. I can't have this anymore.
I'll tell you, if I listened to music where I was only agreeing with the artist on what they said, I would probably listen to no fucking music at all. I mean, seriously, I don't listen to music because I like the person. I listen to music because, I don't know, I like the music. And I don't have to like the person. And I think that's kind of becoming a concept that some people don't understand in today's society.
Well, another thing I don't understand in today's society is the price of wrestling shows. I haven't actually been to a mainstream wrestling show since 2006. And recently with AEW, they've got a show coming up where ticket scalpers already have the majority of the front row tickets on sale for $3,000. And the sad thing is, it seems like people are going to actually pay that. But do you think that AEW are kind of exaggerating a little bit the success of their ticket sales?
Yeah, it's amazing to me that as we've seen really a decline in wrestling sales and merchandise and pretty much everything. What they do to try to make up for that is they increase the ticket sales, especially of the lower seating, the floor seating, those type of things. I mean, WWE has done that for a while to try and make up for the revenue of their low ticket sales. And I don't know, my opinion is, hey, maybe we fucking make a better show rather than try and milk the people who are always going to be there. And then maybe we won't have to do that anymore.
Yeah, because my one of my favorite bands ever is this little underground band called U2. Don't know if you ever heard of them. You should buy their cassettes. Really good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I've kind of been turned off going to see them live now because I've been to pretty much every tour since 2000, and I've come to realize they're not a band anymore. This is a show, and this is not what I want to see. And when it comes to AEW, that's not for me.
What's your favorite U2 song?
Heartland from Rattle and Hum.
Okay, not bad.
But the with AEW and the ticket sales and the way every time they sell something out, they boast about it, and it's like, well, eventually you're not going to keep selling everything out. Like U2, well, U2 do, but like even Bruce Springsteen sometimes doesn't sell out every fucking gig, and I think that's going to be the thing that starts really snowballs the AEW backlash.
Yeah, I mean, there's really two different products in a sense, in that you have AEW that does the pay-per-view or special event shows without a TV deal. And then you have the AEW that's going to do a weekly TV deal with TNT. They're really two different products. What you see today, you cannot predict will be on TNT. What they do today is essentially kind of no rules, right? I mean, they do whatever the hell they want. But on TNT, they're going to have practices and standards. They're not going to be able to necessarily do all of the bleeding or some of the stuff they do today with the language, etc. So I think you're in for a big surprise. It's like they're two different products, so we'll really have to adapt to how AEW does on a week-to-week basis with TNT. It's two different things, so it's a wait-and-see approach.
What's your take on the way Cody Rhodes is booking himself? Because he's criticized and taken a lot of shots at Triple H for the fact that maybe the booking always focused on himself, and it was always, how does the show affect Triple H, and let me get the Wrestlemania spots. Yet with AEW, Cody's in every fucking YouTube video. Every storyline somehow revolves around him. He's putting everyone's having to put him over, and now he's in a main event match against fucking Jericho. And do you not think that Cody Rhodes is possibly coming across as kind of hypocritical?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly those criticisms that he's a Triple H Jr., right? I mean, he's essentially booking the singles division in the men's, and he's winning a lot of matches. I mean, he did lose that tag team match, but outside of that, he's winning. You know, he did have that draw, but essentially, he's booked really strong, is the point. And he's also in charge of the men's singles division. So there is I think, a valid critique of that. At the same time, when you're going to TNT and you're trying to build characters, name brand characters that get you to watch the TV show, there's people like Chris Jericho, people, frankly, you would recognize from WWE TV. So who else is there really besides like a Cody Rhodes? So it's that double-edged sword of the VP putting himself over versus also being one of the bigger brands or stars in the company.
See, just as you said, Triple H Jr., would you like to hear one of my hilarious jokes?
I absolutely would. I'm down for a good joke.
Okay, keep your hands on your sides in case there's any leakaging. Okay, so Triple H and Stephanie are out walking their young daughter in the pram. And Stephanie's getting the pram, and she's getting a little bit tired, and she says to Triple H, hey, would you like to push the baby? And he goes, no, she's too small and doesn't know how to work.
Oh, that's actually great.
Well, speaking of other, what I would call wrestling jokes, CM Punk. Now, I do not like the guy. I always thought he was wildly overrated. Though I will say that Lesnar versus CM Punk is one of my favorite ever matches. What do you think is genuinely CM Punk's next move? Because for me, I think he's fucked. Like, he can't do MMA because he's the worst MMA fighter ever. And if he comes back to wrestling, then he's completely contradicting everything he said about when he was going into MMA.
Yeah, CM Punk is an interesting case. I mean, like I mean, essentially nailed it. So he sucks at MMA, let's just be honest. He's not a good real fighter. He's a great fake fighter, but at the same time, he's burned the bridge with WWE. Will he return? I don't know. I mean, you never say never in WWE, but at the same time, there's an opportunity with AEW. I mean, they would love to have him, but Punk is really a different kind of person, so it's hard to say whether he would return or not. But at the end of the day, I think he's actually lessened his value by, going into the MMA world, getting killed,
Yeah.
and then just kind of doing these conventions. So, I mean, I get the whole situation with WWE. I'm sympathetic to the road and all those sort of complaints he had, but he's also kind of an asshole too. So it's hard to have complete sympathy for Phil Brooks.
Yeah, see, the thing is, if he goes back to WWE, it's pretty obvious that he's going to be on the part-time schedule, which is what he complained about in the first place.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the thing is, and this is why I love to use the word, he's a mock, bro. This CM Punk's a mock, where he, in 1 year, wrestled The Rock on pay-per-view. This is back when pay-per-view still really mattered, twice. Then he got The Undertaker. Then he got Chris Jericho. Then he got Brock Lesnar, all back-to-back. I would assume he made at least 1.5 million from those matches in bonuses alone. And then he has the balls to complain and say, the WWE didn't use me well. It's like, hey, CM Punk, wrestling's not real. Just make sure you're getting paid. No one gives a fuck who wins or loses.
Yeah, there's, the funny thing is, I actually used to be a huge CM Punk fan when he was during his prime run in WWE. And, CM Punk to me is an interesting case. I mean, he obviously didn't get the main event a lot. That went to other people like John Cena, for example. But the more bitter he got, the more unlikable he became. So,
yeah,
it really turned into this real thing where he became unlikable and he left the company and he went into MMA and got his ass kicked. And now he's an announcer for MMA and he almost got into it with a fan. And hey, look, the fan could have kicked his ass. Let's be honest here. We don't know.
Yeah, I heard there's a thing that he was on an MTV game show, and one of those MTV goofs got into CM Punk's face, and CM Punk backed down, and it's like, would you just fucking go back and kiss Vince's arse?
I mean, CM Punk, or Phil Brooks, as we call him, is never. I mean, the thing is, you always say, like, never say never in WWE, right? That's the cliche saying. At the end of the day, there's always one guy that I have said, maybe he's the exception to that. And that's Phil Brooks. That's CM Punk. I don't know if he loves wrestling at this point enough to return. Maybe he does. I don't know. But if he does, hopefully he'll gain fucking 40 pounds.
Well, speaking of someone who's 40 pounds heavier, I want to ask you about Jim Cornette. Now, with Jim Cornette, he is a guy who, see, this is when I worry about people who take him seriously, because it's become obvious for years that whatever's the popular thing, he hates it. Tune into my podcast to find out why. And the fact that the Young Bucks years ago even sent out the screenshots of the DMs he had sent them about trying to work a storyline. So my question is, what's your take on Jim Cornette fighting everyone to try to make himself relevant?
Jim, I'll tell you, my first exposure to Jim was as NWA, as a manager for the Midnight Express. And he was, honestly, Jim was one of the greatest managers of all time. I really do feel that. But Jim is also a little bit stuck in the past as well. Some good, some bad, right? And I think he doesn't understand the evolution of wrestling. And again, the flippity-do stuff, I don't understand necessarily either. But Jim has got a lot of valid points. I think Jim just goes over the top sometimes with the political stuff. Like, Look, I get you have different political opinions, but this is fucking wrestling. Who cares? It's basically a TV show with fake fighting. There's no reason to get all worked up into political stuff. So there's an element of Jim that does it for political stuff as well. But I think Jim, just based on his experience, has a lot of valid points. I mean, he trashes people like Ryan Satin, who's a total fucking loser. Or people like Joey Ryan, who flips fucking people with his dick. That's terrible for the business. It's fine for him, right? He makes money off of it. Good for him. But in the bigger picture, it's terrible for wrestling. Everybody knows it's fake, but how fake can you make it before nobody wants to watch it?
Exactly. And I've always had a problem with him with that tennis racket. Like, are you telling me that fucking Yokozuna can take a punch by Vader, but a fucking Jim Cornette with a tennis racket he has to sell? But I got to ask you about WWE critics. Now, of course, Clash of the Champions was last night. I didn't watch it, but there was a lot of people online tearing it apart. But I think that WWE have this thing where they can do no right, where it's like people almost go into their shows with the intention of wanting to not like it, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, it totally makes sense. I mean, they've created this hardcore fan base that's essentially bitter to the show. They don't like a lot of the decisions they made. I mean, they watch AEW, they watch indie/ROH wrestling. WWE is in an identity crisis. What do they really cater to? You've got a show in Raw, for example, that's the average viewer is 50-something years old. It's on 8 to 11. I don't know about you, but not many kids are watching till 11 o'clock at night. They're fucking going to school. Their parents are saying, hell no, motherfucker, your ass is going to bed. Right? So it's just an identity crisis in what audience do we cater to? And I think that's what they have to figure out ultimately, and especially as they go to SmackDown Live on Friday. And again, that younger audience is going out at night. They're not going to watch SmackDown. I mean, the people who currently watch SmackDown are going to watch SmackDown. But outside of that, how many people that are new, that are football or sports fans on Fox, are really going to watch SmackDown? And I think that's their dilemma in trying to draw a new audience.
Yeah, that's what I call the Star Trek conundrum. Like, you could do whatever you want with the next Star Trek film, but only Star Trek fans are going to watch. You could put fucking Eddie Murphy as Captain Kirk, and only Star Trek fans are going.
I agree. I mean, it is what it is. Like, the thing about this is, honestly, I'm surprised they haven't figured this out. There's a niche audience base. They're going to watch no matter what. They could put the dumbest shit ever on TV, and they're going to watch, right? I mean, that's just a wrestling fan. They've watched for 30 years, 40 years, 20 years, whatever. But then there's a newer audience that they have to appeal to, and you look at that newer audience, that younger audience, and I guess the hipness, so to speak, is just not there so far. And you see the advertisements on Fox, and all you see on social media is like the same wrestling audience talking about the advertisements on Fox. It's not new viewers. So, man, it's going to be a tough situation on Fox. Look, they're a great promotional machine, especially compared to USA Network. But at the end of the day, you have to put on a good product for people to watch it, especially on a Friday night. And I'm not seeing that so far.
Well, the one thing that I did see so far was earlier on today, and of course you were talking about WWE critics, but you yourself have got a few, I should say, feuds going on. I seen one, an argument you were having with Matt Coon earlier. So, what have you got to say about your online critics who keep giving you shit no matter what?
Yeah, it's a really interesting situation for me. I mean, I never asked for any of this. It really started out with the XFL news that I broke the story of the XFL returning. And I started getting a lot of followers from that. And, I did that because I had sources in WWE. I just never really cared, right? I was just like, who cares? That was not a big deal to me. So I started reporting news, and then my following grew, and it grew, and it grew. And people started like watching every word that I make. And I was on ESPN radio all the time, and Pardon the Interruption, and all of these like mainstream outlets. And I think there's a lot of jealousy, frankly, from the wrestling media as far as, who are you? What do you do? I was kind of coming in and taking over. I wasn't trying to. I mean, hell, I don't do this for a living. I write for fun. I write sports, right? But I know people in WWE. At the end of the day, I report news for people who follow me just out of fun. Yeah, it's not a serious thing to me. This is a TV show. It's entertainment. And it's like there's this whole fan base that takes this so seriously. Like, oh my God, Charlotte's robe was this color. Newsflash, assholes. I saw the robe backstage. I just thought it was a different color than it was. That's the truth. But there's this just like really toxic community, and I've seen it the most on social media on Twitter. And I used to engage these people to try to have honest conversation because, like a normal person, I thought, well, I'll talk to these people and they'll understand. And then I realized, yeah, there's really no kind of relating with these people. There's no discussing with these people. There's no having a conversation. So now I just block them because they're fucking stupid.
Yeah, I've said to people that like this year alone, I've done more blocking than was in the Lego movie.
Yeah, I'm up to over 700 for sure.
Whoa, yeah.
Yeah.
I just passed 100 in March, but Jesus, that's fucking loads.
Yeah, I mean, I give people a little leeway usually, especially if they're verified. But at the end of the day, if you're not willing to listen and you don't understand the WWE process, which is, frankly, things change by the hour, then you know what? You deserve to be blocked. I can report things in real time that change rapidly. People like Dave Meltzer report things after the fact on their paywall, and they get the luxury of that, right? Oh, well, I reported this, or this was the case. I get that. But really putting yourself out there to do that, you have to report things in real time. And it really identifies to me how things change so much and how unstable I think the WWE product is. I mean, there are actually some people that believe I just make this up. There is a fantasy in my head where I love WWE or I love the attention, and I just make this up. This WWE news, is an enormous fucking headache for me. Every day I wake up to threats and insults. Do you really fucking think that I do this for fun? Like, I don't know. How stupid are you?
I'm very stupid, but I know. Are you talking about the other people?
Yeah, I mean, it's really amazing to me the DMs that I get, and I've started to share those on my Patreon account so that they can see what I have to deal with. Cheap plug. Oh, you didn't know wrestling, so /Patreon, and I've started to share some of those tweets that they can see. But you would really be amazed. I'm attacked all day long, and 90-something% of it I ignore. And I've learned because, at the end of the day, you don't deserve my platform to to really get that attention.
And I've even said to people that like WrestleMania matches that have been advertised and hyped up have been cancelled at the last minute. So how do you know that Brad doesn't know what's going on?
It's so weird. I mean, honestly, with some of the stories I've broken so many. The XFL was a big one. It was all over international news. But there's been a ton of that since then that no other journalist has had. Period. End of story. And not debatable. Facts are facts. And to think that, geez, he's just guessing or he doesn't have sources or WWE is really hard to get sources in. Period. It's really hard to penetrate that company and get sources and understand what's going on. I have that. That is an absolute fact. I have that documentation trail. And you can get mad at me. You can not like my opinions, etc. That's totally fine. I don't care. Matt Kuhn would be one of those people. But at the end of the day, a fact is a fact is a fact is a fact. And I had that information. And it is what it is. It's just really odd to me, this wrestling culture versus this sports culture, which is primarily what I do. At the end of the day, I'm a sports writer, not a wrestling writer. I report on wrestling news, but I get paid for sports writing. Primarily. I mean, I think I've done like 1 or 2 articles ever on WWE. I just do this to entertain the fans, to let them see and share what I know. Period. And so I've started doing that on the Patreon now, but at the end of the day, again, they can believe it or not. I don't care. I'm just giving them the actual factual information from people within the fucking WWE. It's literally that simple.
Well, some may call them spoilers, but I have a spoiler for anyone listening. Whatever date this episode comes out, we're recording this on September 16th, so you'll be hearing it in the future. Speaking of the future, Brad, and speaking of spoilers, let's talk about some WrestleMania 36 rumors, because I've heard stuff from, not that I have an insider person, but I know a guy that knows a lot of WWE people. So let's hear some of the rumored matchups you've heard for WrestleMania.
The only thing I've heard is potentially Bray Wyatt versus Undertaker if they continue momentum. And again, if they don't, then the match may not happen. And if I don't know the match is going to happen, I will bluntly tell you, the match is not going to happen that I'm aware of. And I think that's what, I think a lot of wrestling journalism is missing today. They're afraid to say, I don't know, or I'll ask. We don't have all the answers. Guys, I hate to tell you, I don't do this for a living. I have a job and a family. Okay, believe it or not, I have like a great life outside of wrestling. Occasionally I talk to people, for sure, every week. And whatever I'm told, I'm told. But it's very reliable sources. It's not like I'm making stuff up out of air. And it's so weird to me that people think, Matt Kuhn included, obviously, Disco Inferno, that fucking gonzo-nosed motherfucker who loves to put himself over. Yeah, it's like they have the information and they know what they're talking about. I don't know. Have a conversation with me. Let's talk it out. And it's always weird to me that they have these preconceived notions and they go with what they go with. And facts are really irrelevant. I mean, they say they love facts, but at the end of the day, facts are facts. And you either have them or you don't. And in a lot of cases of Matt Kuhn, there's a lot of opinions and not a lot of facts. And in Disco Inferno, who, again, I already said, is a gonzo motherfucker who works at a strip club and is fucking 50 years old-ish. look, I get it. You're enjoying your life and you're out of wrestling and you're relevant in that you have done good work in Impact. Look, Disco Inferno is one of the best heels in wrestling. I get it. But at the end of the day, he doesn't understand the dynamic of pro wrestling when it comes to journalism. And so Disco Inferno has a very singular belief. And he just comes out with what he comes out with.
Well, what I think we should come out with now, just as we begin to wrap up, Brad, is I'm going to ask you the three big questions. And these are the questions I ask everybody. And you know the pathetic thing is, Brad, I ask everybody these three questions, and I still wrote them down in case I forgot them. That's how fucking stupid I am. But are you ready for the three big questions, Brad?
I'm ready. Ask me 20 questions. I don't care. Like, the thing about it, Hughezy, is I'm an open book. Just ask me. I'm ready for 3. I'm ready for 6. I'm ready for 9. Let's hear it.
Who is better, Wu-Tang or Tupac?
Oh, Tupac. I mean, California is a great song. I love California. I have it on iTunes. I think Tupac's is a better singer, period.
Who is better, Queen or the Beatles?
Ooh, I'm going to go with Queen. Let It Go from Beatles is good. I really like that. Again, I have that on my iTunes, but man, at the end of the day, Queen has so many good songs. I'm just an 80s rock fan. I have to go with Queen for sure.
Now, here's the big one, Brad, and this can make or break you, boy.
Ooh.
So get ready. The Spice Girls are back. Who is your favorite Spice Girl?
Posh Spice. Tell me what I want, what I really, really want.
No, I'm sorry. That's the incorrect answer. The answer we were looking for was Baby Spice.
Ooh, okay. That's a good one, too.
She's got that big arse. But listen, Brad, I just want to thank you so much for your time. Would you like to plug everything for us?
Plug at the Brad Shepard on Twitter. SHEPARD. ProSportsExtra.com. And the Oh You Didn't Know Wrestling show on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, pretty much fucking every platform you can think of. So yeah, just download it there. And, by the way, sorry to interrupt, we have the Patreon. Oh You Didn't Know Wrestling show, Patreon. Patreon.OYDKWS.
And would you like to record a message for Conan and Disco just before we sign off?
Patreon, plug that. Yeah, Conan is great. Like, he was so important to just Lucha Wrestling, period. End of story. Like, there's no doubting that. Disco, he's a gonzo motherfucker who works at a strip club and is 50 years old. He's got a lot of good points. I'll say that. But at the end of the day, he's a total mark for himself. Who, let's face it, he's friends with Matt Coon and some of these other wrestling journalists. He talks about marks on Vince Russo, the brand. He is the definition of a mark. He buddies up with these people like Dave Meltzer. They're on a show. Disco, come on, dude. Glenn, come on. You're a fucking mark. End of story.
I think there's no better way to end it there. Listen, Brad, I'd love to talk to you again later in the year when we know more about what's going on with Mania. Would you be up for that?
Absolutely. I would love that.
Thanks. Well, Brad, listen, it's great to talk to you, and I'll talk to you again in a few months, and have a good one.
You too. Thank you so much.